Tonight on the Worldview Report, opposition to the Biden regime's plans to import thousands of Palestinian refugees to American cities is growing, as 35 U.S. senators have signed an open letter to the president demanding a halt to all plans involving refugees from Gaza. A man died Saturday night after his vehicle crashed into an outer perimeter gate of the White House. A grand jury in Tarrant County, Texas, has refused to press charges against a woman who shot and killed a 14-year-old boy who was trying to break into her home. More Chinese illegal aliens were encountered at the U.S. southern border in just 2 days than in all of fiscal year 2021. 2 Pennsylvania farmers were arrested last month and jailed on 30-day sentences with no sentencing hearing and no option for bail. What did they do that prompted such a tyrannical response? We'll tell you. All these stories and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brannon Howse. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brannon Howse.
Good evening and welcome to the Worldview Report. The backlash is growing against Democrat plans to import tens of thousands of Hamas-supporting, Jew-hating Gazans into American cities and towns as so-called refugees. A group of 35 Republican senators, led by Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, they have published an open letter petitioning the Biden regime to halt plans to accept Gazan refugees into the United States. They are citing national security concerns. The senators, they expressed apprehension over potential terrorist connections within the refugee population from Gaza. In a letter dated May 1st, they argued that the administration should suspend these plans until further scrutiny and security measures are assured. Here's what the letter states, quote, "Your administration's reported plan to accept Gazan refugees poses a national security risk to the United States. With more than a third of Gazans supporting the Hamas militants, we are not confident that your administration can adequately vet this high-risk population for terrorist ties and sympathies before admitting them into the United States. We are further worried that accepting Gazan refugees might cause a crisis at the Egypt-Gaza border, leading to chaos that would only empower Iran-backed Hamas. We are also frustrated that your administration is pushing ahead with a plan to evacuate Gazans from the Strip when there are still American citizens held hostage by Hamas," end quote. The call for action follows a CBS News report from April 30th, which indicated that the Biden administration is indeed considering the resettlement of Palestinians from Gaza who have family ties to American citizens or U.S. permanent residents. The senators and their letter, it highlighted the complicated security dynamics in Gaza and noted that Hamas controls the area and there is limited access by U.S. officials for vetting purposes. They expressed concerns about the integrity of the vetting process given the current political influence in Gaza. A Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research poll conducted in March showed strong local support for Hamas, complicating, of course, the narrative around the Gazan refugee program. According to the poll, 71% of Palestinians in Gaza endorsed Hamas's actions in an attack on Israel on October 7th, and 52% of the Gazans supported the continuation of Hamas's governance. A man was pronounced dead Saturday night after his vehicle crashed into an outer perimeter gate of the White House. The crash happened around 10:30 p.m. local time at the intersection of 15th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest. Metropolitan Police arrived on the scene at 10:46 p.m. and officials reportedly found the male driver deceased inside the car. The Secret Service responded, stating that there was no threat to the White House as a result of the incident. The investigation is being conducted by the Secret Service and local police authorities. Joe Biden was not at the White House at the time of the crash, as he was spending the weekend on vacation in Delaware. The Daily Caller News Foundation reports that more Chinese illegal aliens were encountered at the U.S. southern border in just 2 days than in all of fiscal year 2021. That's according to Fox News. There were approximately 262 Chinese migrants caught by Border Patrol at the San Diego sector on May 1st, as well as 223 on May 2nd. That's what a Customs and Border Protection source told the Fox News reporter. Only 323 Chinese nationals were apprehended by Border Patrol at the southern border throughout all of fiscal year 2021. That's according to CBP data. There has been a surge of Chinese immigrants illegally crossing the southern border under the Biden administration. There were 1,970 Chinese illegal migrant apprehensions at the southern border in fiscal year 2022 and 24,048 in fiscal year 2023. In the first 6 months of fiscal year 2024, there have been more than 24,200 apprehensions. That's what the data shows. Watch this. China expert Gordon Chang told the Daily Caller News Foundation in May of 2023, noting that an unknown number of the migrants, very possibly the majority, are, well, actors. Chang said, quote, "When I first saw the surge in Chinese migrants, that's the thought that came to my mind, that these are either Ministry of State security agents or Chinese military who are coming to this country to commit acts of sabotage against the U.S., end quote. The Biden administration, well, they loosened their vetting process standards for Chinese immigrants that are seeking to enter the country illegally. This was done back in April of 2023. And that's according to an internal CBP, email that was obtained by the Daily Caller. The email ordered Border Patrol agents to cut down on the number of questions that are being asked from 40 to just 5 questions, thus fast-tracking the migrants' release into the U.S. There were approximately 1.6 million migrant encounters at the southern border in fiscal year 2021, compared to over 2 million in fiscal year 2023 and over 1 million thus far in fiscal year 2024. That's again according to CBP data. World at Daily reports that state legal action in Pennsylvania is sparking outrage for the result that it demanded. 2 farmers were arrested and jailed on 30-day sentences with no sentencing hearing and no option for bail. Authorities say that's the process that they use for contempt charges, for which Ethan Wentworth of Airville, York County, and Rusty Eyre of Christina, Lancaster County have been serving time since last month. Broadcast outlet WPMT in Harrisburg reported that the government's complaint, it comes from concerns about their company. Their company is called No Bull Solutions, which offers to help dairy farmers with their reproductive management of cattle. Their lawyer, Robert Barnes, charges, quote, "This is the craziest thing I have ever seen," end quote. Here's a video podcast by Yansa TV, which further explains the conflict. Watch this.
Attorney Robert Barnes is representing Ethan Wentworth of Airville and Rusty Herr of Christiana.
I've seen crazy cases. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen.
They're former dairy farmers who now operate Noble Solutions, a breeding company which helps dairy farms with reproductive management of cattle. For 2 weeks, the men have sat in prison, denied bail.
They are still as baffled today as they were the day they were suddenly jailed as to why they're there, what happened, did they do something wrong? They're still trying to figure that out. Is there some way they can fix it?
According to prison officials, Wentworth was booked into the York County Prison on April 10th for a 30-day sentence on a civil charge. Herr was arrested 1 day later on a contempt of court charge and sent to Lancaster County Prison for a 30-day sentence as well. Barnes says neither were given due process.
Hey there, friends. Welcome back to As a Man Thinketh on Yanasa TV. So somebody brought this up to my attention, and this is one of the scariest stories that I have ever heard. And any of you who are into animal husbandry, who take care of animals, who occasionally have people come out to help you with your animals, this case should deeply concern you. First of all, let's get to the facts here. 2 Pennsylvania men operating a dairy reproduction service are in prison following a complaint of practicing veterinary medicine without a license. I think it's important to emphasize the word veterinary medicine. Specifically, from what we know, Noble Solutions was performing reproductive ultrasound pregnancy checks. According to their Facebook page, Noble Solutions, Noble, but it's kind of like one word, noble, I like it, guys. Noble Solutions is an encompassing reproductive management business dedicated to dairy farmers to help them meet and exceed the reproduction goals within their herd. Ranchers use ultrasound for many reasons. Sometimes ranchers use ultrasound to actually check the fat content of their beef, to know how their feeding program is going, to know whether or not they're going to be able to create that prime cut that sells for the most amount of money. Ultrasound could be used to diagnose medical conditions, but in this particular case, what they're doing is they're using it to observe the physical condition of the cow. And I think there's a distinction between those two. According to the Journal of Medical Ethics, pregnancy in and of itself is not regarded as dysfunctional. So if it's not regarded as dysfunctional, it's not a medical condition, it's not a negative diagnosis. Pregnancy is not usually considered a disease. So these men were sentenced and jailed on a 30-day civil sentence by the Commonwealth Court without a hearing or trial.
Breitbart reports that Brexit boss Nigel Farage lamented that, quote, sectarian politics is here to stay, end quote, in Britain, as dozens of Islamic candidates running on the issue of Gaza won local elections across the country this week. While the left-wing Labour Party was the clear winner of the local council and mayoral elections held in Britain on Thursday, we did see Rishi Sunak's Conservatives continue to flounder. There is increasing concern over Muslim voters abandoning Labour in favor of single-issue candidates. According to an analysis by The Telegraph of election results, in areas with the highest proportion of Muslim voters, such as Blackburn, Bradford, Pendle, Oldham, and Manchester, the Labour Party saw its support fall by an average of 25 points. Labour Party leader Sir Keir Starmer, he attempted to distance himself and his party from the anti-Semitism scandals which plagued his predecessor, that would be socialist Jeremy Corbyn. And it has come at the cost of Muslim voters, who are traditionally one of Labour's key voting blocs, many of whom abandoned the party in favor of independent candidates who centered their campaigns on the conflict in Gaza. Commenting on the shift in the British political landscape, Brexit's Nigel Farage said, quote, there have been no democratic elections in Gaza for nearly 20 years, yet Gaza is being voted on in English towns and cities. What a mess we have allowed ourselves to become, end quote. Farage then added, quote, sectarian politics is here to stay. We now have Islamic voting in Britain, which, over the course of the next decade, will give Labour a very, very big headache, end quote. Watch this.
We will not be silent. We will raise the voice of Gaza. We will raise the voice of Palestine. Allahu Akbar.
I'm going to tell you something here. This is a clear message to Starmer. Bradford has rejected Labour. It's rejected Zionism. And this is a message to you, Nasha and Imran Hussein. We are coming for you in the general election. Zionism, anyone that stands with Zionism, we're coming after you. Free Palestine!
Free Palestine.
A very big headache indeed. And that's the same blowback that Joe Biden is facing in key swing states like Michigan. We'll be right back after this break.
Sounds rolling. All 3 cameras. We're good.
Is there any regrets that you have in life? I should sit here and say, yeah, I got a lot of regrets. But when I look back on my life and I understand the lives that were lost, I mean, I'm sitting here with you. And I can tell my story.
Former National Security Advisor Lieutenant General Michael Flynn pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
He was, by definition, the most dangerous possible person for Donald Trump to hire.
Really brilliant military career, serving 33 years. Why was he being so elusive?
Mike Flynn told the truth and faced life in prison.
Welcome back from the break. Thank you for joining us tonight and every night. And thank you for remembering that you really are our biggest sponsor. And one way you can do that is through our foundation, WVWFoundation.com. Our foundation helps to shove this broadcast out for free. That's right, free. It takes a team of about 7 of us, 15 man-hours a day, Monday through Friday, to put the program together. And yet we push it out for free because of our foundation. You see, we could air this and then put it right behind a paywall and say you got to pay up to see it. But no, our foundation comes along and says, look, let's push this out for free as a broadcast service, educational service, and ministry broadcast. And that's what our foundation is committed to, helping to produce news and information and educational programming and ministry programming that helps people understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. So if you appreciate this broadcast, would you please consider supporting the foundation that brings it to you? WVWFoundation.com. WVWFoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. We do need your support. In fact, many of you I know enjoy the broadcast, watch the broadcast, but never support us. Now, some of you can't afford to. I get it. But many of you can. So would you at least consider $5, $10 a month, $20 a month, making an automatic contribution there at WVWFoundation.com. You can indeed set up an automatic contribution so you don't even have to think about it anymore. Your life is busy. So just set up that automatic contribution so you don't forget, and we can count on the funding each and every month. So thank you for doing that. But again, you'll find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. WVWFoundation.com, WVWFoundation.com. Thank you. The world is being forced to acknowledge some of the negative effects of experimental weather manipulation operations that are underway and have been all over the globe. The UAE reportedly received a year's worth of rain in 24 hours. Mainstream corporate media outlets like Bloomberg News are admitting the recent historic flooding in Dubai were worsened due to, quote, cloud seeding, end quote. Bloomberg attributes Dubai's historic rain to man-made climate engineering. Of course they do. The New York Post reported on April 17th that, quote, historic UAE storm may have been self-inflicted by cloud seeding, end quote. Dubai was hit by flooding that, well, submerged the roads and vehicles and caused flights to be diverted after a reported 158 millimeters of rain fell in 24 hours. That's equivalent to the typical yearly average. Some media outlets were criticized for publishing conflicting reports about the event. A lot in the mainstream media are blaming cloud seeding for the huge flood. Wired magazine published an article on Wednesday titled, quote, no, Dubai's floods weren't caused by cloud seeding, end quote. Yet, in 2020, Wired magazine, well, they ran with the headline, quote, bringing in the rain. Has the UAE's cloud seeding program gone too far, end quote. That was in an article, and it claimed, quote, waterlogged streets and flooded malls, end quote, are prompting, quote, questions over chemicals being pumped into the skies, end quote. Folks, this is what you call losing track of your own lies. Just the News reports that while the legal status of abortion in the U.S. is being debated in state houses across the country, in Italy, the battle is moving to the source of the killing, the abortion clinics. Italy's abortion laws, well, they are among the most restrictive in Europe, largely because the country is, well, home to the Vatican, which, despite criticisms of progressive policies under Pope Francis, has pretty much been unwavering in its opposition to abortion. Another factor for why Italy's abortion stance is that Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is a conservative firebrand and sees abortion as contrary to the country's goal of curbing its dramatic population decline. In the latest move, Italy's parliament voted to allow campaigners who, quote, support motherhood, end quote, to enter abortion clinics to convince women not to terminate their pregnancies. Meloni said that the new law is aimed at informing prospective mothers about the impacts of their decision. Still, the wider trend across Europe on abortion is, of course, loosening of restrictions. Critics of the Italian initiative said that allowing activists into clinics was unsafe and unethical and against the, quote, fundamental right, end quote, to women's safe access to abortion in Europe. Even before the latest measure, Italian doctors, they had a right to refuse abortion access on a case-by-case basis. Data from 2021 showed that more than 60% of gynecologists refused to perform the procedures in almost all cases. A former federal government employee has been charged with repeatedly submitting fake tips to the FBI, alleging that some of his intelligence community coworkers participated in the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot. Miguel Zapata was arrested on Thursday in Virginia on a charge of submitting false statements to law enforcement. That's according to WTOP News. An FBI task force officer's affidavit reads that Zapata sent at least 7 anonymous tips to the FBI's website. Zapata reportedly used a web anonymizer service to send the tips to the FBI. As of now, it is not known what federal agency Zapata worked for. The affidavit states, quote, none of the 7 government employees and contractors were in Washington, D.C. on January 6 or attacked the Capitol, end quote. Zapata's first tip was submitted on February 10th, 2021, and it said that a former coworker was trying to overthrow the U.S. government, that the coworker espouses conspiracy theories and retaliates against colleagues who don't share his political views. That's according to the affidavit. Another tip that month accused an intelligence agency contractor of sharing classified information with so-called extremist groups, including the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, quote, to foment terror and incite violence, end quote. Zapata worked with that person from 2017 to 2019. That's what the affidavit says. At this time, there is no known motive for why Zapata may have made the false reports. Well, now it's time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. Multiple media outlets in the U.S. and Israel are reporting that Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition government voted unanimously on Sunday to shut down Al Jazeera. That's the Qatari-based television station in Israel, and it's due to its coverage of the war during the Gaza conflict. Israeli police, they raided a Jerusalem hotel room that was used by Al Jazeera as its de facto office following the decision. The video circulated online, and it showed plainclothes officers dismantling camera equipment in a hotel room in East Jerusalem. The move comes a month after Netanyahu vowed to shut down the television channel in the country following the passage of a sweeping law allowing the government to ban foreign networks perceived as posing a threat to national security. The law was proposed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Communications Minister Shlomo Karhi, and it grants Karhi the ability to ban the channel from operating for 45 days. The government authorized Karhi to order the cessation of the channel's broadcast in Israel, in Arabic and English, thus to close its official offices in Israel. They were authorized to confiscate equipment used by its personnel and to limit access from Israel to the network's website. Al Jazeera slammed the decision, calling it a, quote, deceptive and slanderous move, end quote. Al Jazeera said it, quote, vehemently rejects the allegations presented by Israeli authorities, suggesting professional media standards have been violated, end quote. Al Jazeera's legal team, well, they are preparing a response to the closure decision, which was blasted by the United Nations and the Foreign Press Association. The Foreign Press Association said that with this decision, quote, Israel joins a dubious club of authoritarian governments, end quote, urging the Netanyahu government to, quote, reverse this harmful step and uphold its commitment to freedom of the press. This is a dark day for democracy, end quote. Well, I'll tell you one thing I haven't heard. I haven't heard the UN or the Foreign Press Association blasting Ukraine's government for shutting down news outlets there. In fact, unless Ukraine's news media provides war coverage that's, well, basically pro-Ukrainian propaganda, it gets shut down and its journalists get arrested. But not one word from the bleeding hearts in the media about Zelensky's trampling over the freedom of press. The facts are, well, really, frankly, this. In a time of war, governments, well, they attack various media outlets for various reasons. That's why there's the old adage, one of the first casualties of war is the truth. So, let the facts speak for themselves. At least you would think the liberals could be consistent. But then again, that's often the problem with liberals. They aren't consistent. Well, that does it for this edition of the Worldview Report. Thanks for watching and for supporting this viewer-supported broadcast. You can do that a few ways. One way is by going to melissahousebg.com, melissahousebg.com. I'm looking for my Bella Grace. There it is. melissahousebg.com if you'd like to take this elixir that Melissa and I take each and every day. It is collagen, cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory. And it has astaxanthin that's loaded with antioxidants to take on those free radicals. Again, went and got my haircut again over the weekend, and the girl had to use the thinning shears for the second time. This hasn't happened in years. It happened last time and this time, but prior to that, it hasn't happened in years. Thinning shears, quite amazing. And I think it's due to the collagen in here, because this collagen, actually 95% of it gets into your body, according to studies. You'll find about 80 clinical trials at melissahousebg.com, melissahousebg.com. Melissa and I also swish with this twice a day. It's called Numi, and Numi has a molecule in it called glutathione. Go check it out. Many studies show that glutathione is a detoxer of our cells. So, are you worried about various things that have happened in the U.S. in the last few years? You think you might want to detoxify your cells for any reason? Well, then you might want to research glutathione. And in Numi, you will find glutathione. Full details at Numi.com/house and the numeral 1. Numi, Neumi.com/HOWSE and number 1, the number 1. And then be sure to visit twc.health/Brannon, twc.health/Brannon. And there you'll find this emergency medical kit with 8 meds, 8 critical meds. Have 1 or 2 for every family member like I do. So if there's an interruption in just-in-time inventory or the power grid goes down, you at least have some antibiotics and other things on hand. You can find out what all the 8 meds are and what they treat by going to twc.health/Brannon, twc.health/Brannon. All right? Well, that does it for this broadcast. Till next time, I'm Brannon Howse. May God save America. Take care.